Hello, and welcome to the And Then Right podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Walsh, and this is episode 3, Shoulda, Woulda, Coulda. Thank you for joining me again. Today I'll be discussing the ways in which we talk around our writing practice and the language we use in communication with ourselves. For instance, what kind of language have you internalized when it comes to these questions? What does it take to get you in the seat? Are you a writer who has the discipline to write every day, inspired or not? Or does it take a certain mood, an aha moment, or a spark of inspiration to drive you to create? This isn't a new topic of discussion, and some in the writing world would even call it a debate. As with most things in life, although I'm thinking of the health and wellness space specifically, people really like telling you what you should do. You should get 8 hours of sleep per night. You should be eating whole foods all day, every day. You should be exercising at least 30 minutes per day. This translates to most realms, right? With writing, I often hear things like, you can't wait for inspiration to strike. You'll never write anything that way. Or, real writers should be writing every day, refining their craft. Or, you should write at the same time every day. Block that time out, no exceptions. And while I appreciate the art of discipline and know that habits are developed through repetition, there is a part of me that feels like I'm failing when I'm not doing all the things I know I should be doing. The word should in general is problematic for me, in particular, the accumulation of it. It creates an expectation, a certain feeling in my body that ends up looking a lot like dread. I don't want to dread my writing process, or the times I can get out in nature to exercise, or the 2, not 3 times a day, I might be able to make a meal from scratch. The should part of that robs the joy right out of whatever experience I'm having. And let's be honest, we shouldn't be robbing ourselves of joy because we've let outside forces invade our brain. So, what are we to do about this? One tactic I've found to be helpful is shifting my expectations through language. This one is basic but profound. Instead of greeting each day with, well, I need to get XYZ done today, or I should really crank out at least 10 pages today, or I'll still be behind on this draft. Instead, I'll pause. I'll take a moment early in the day to write in my gratitude journal. What is already going well? What am I thankful for? What do I appreciate? Simply writing the words I'm grateful for causes a shift in me mentally. Then, when planning my day, instead of using words and phrases like, I need to, I should, I have to, I must, I'll survey the scene and say things like, it would be nice to, I'd like to, I hope I have time to. It's lighter. I don't feel as burned down, even though I still have the same amount of things to do. Another shift, and this isn't necessarily writing related, but speaks to the power of language, came from something I saw online a while back. It was posted on Instagram by Feminist Voice, and it said, lately, I've been replacing my I'm sorries with thank yous. Like instead of sorry I'm late, I'll say, thanks for waiting for me. Or instead of saying, sorry for being such a mess, I'll say, thank you for loving me and caring about me unconditionally. And it's not only shifted the way I think and feel about myself, but also improved my relationships with others who now get to receive my gratitude instead of my negativity. Gratitude instead of negativity, that was huge for me. Can you feel the difference in those statements? As writers, we know the power of language, and yet I know I need these reminders, these moments of discovery where I learn to be a bit kinder and more gentle to myself. So, another tactic that has allowed me to shift my expectations is simply recognizing the fact that my life is an ever shifting landscape of demands and responsibilities. My personal writing doesn't always make it to the top of the list, if ever. And what's allowed me to let go of whatever frustration builds out of that realization is that things will not always be this way. For example, when I was pregnant with my son, people told me that life as I knew it was over, that I would never have time to myself again, that I may as well kiss any of my creative endeavors goodbye for the next 18 years. Gee, thanks for the pep talk. But no, I did recognize the kernel of truth in all of this unsolicited advice. Of course, my life was about to change drastically, and it did. One of the things both my husband and I have said since having kids is we had so much free time before, or its variation, we wasted so much time. But you don't know what you don't know until it's upon you. And me, being the stubborn person I am, refused to accept that I would write any less. And somehow, after Eli was born, I still wrote. Part of my success in this was that when he was around 7 months old, my husband got on a location shoot. So we all relocated for nearly 8 months. I was plopped down in a location with no friends and family, no support system, with a young baby, and now pregnant with my daughter. What else was I going to do but hang out and write while my son slept? And he slept all the time. I had no idea how lucky I was until my daughter was born. Suddenly, my writing time evaporated. She never slept for nearly 2 years, which meant neither did I. And now there were two kids, and my husband was still working out of town for long stretches. So it was just me wrangling it all. In this season of my life, no amount of writing advice would have helped to get me in the seat. There simply wasn't time, and what precious minutes I did get was spent doing basic things like eating, showering, and occasionally getting a little bit of sleep. And I did get frustrated during these years. I didn't feel like a writer anymore. I didn't call myself a writer anymore. I stopped blogging, and even worse, wasn't even writing in my journal. And when I don't write in my journal, the world becomes a much more difficult place to navigate. It was around this time I was gifted the advice, and sometimes advice is a gift, of a simple question: what do you need right now? And I started asking myself that every day. Did I always get what I needed in that moment? Nope. But when you ask yourself that and can begin to attend to the most pressing needs in your life, space begins to open up in other realms. Once you've attended to getting a bit more rest, exercise, proper nutrition, you have the mental space to begin creating again. I've also had to grapple with the fact that I create in multiple modes. I love writing, it's my first love, but I am also a filmmaker and a maker. I love weaving in particular and also knitting. And sometimes my desire to do these other things outweighs my desire to write. I used to panic. I'm not writing, but I've also learned that these other activities allow my brain to rest and work out kinks in whatever it is I'm working on. Time spent weaving nearly always leads to writing ideas. I don't know why. So even though it's time spent not actively writing, ultimately it has served my writing. And it was a relief when I made this connection. I felt justified doing other things, when the truth is, I don't need to justify anything. When I follow my own rhythms, it all happens as it needs to. See? So easy, right? I hope I'm not making this sound gloriously simple. I mean, I absolutely hope it is easier for you to arrive at these conclusions. I just seem to have a gift for making things more difficult than they need to be. But eventually, I do get there. So just get in the seat sometimes when it makes sense for you. Allowing outside pressure and expectations to take up space in your brain is not going to make you a better writer. I can guarantee that. And of course, this isn't to say there isn't useful advice or worthy practices being demonstrated for us. I love hearing about others' processes, what has or hasn't worked for them. But I also understand that what works for one person may not work for me. That what the best-selling author does, while probably a good model, may not be something I can replicate in my life at this moment, nor would I necessarily want to. Now it's your turn. I would love to hear about how you have found your optimal practice, or if you aren't quite there yet, what you think it might look like. What roadblocks have you overcome to arrive at the place that's just right for you? If you're comfortable sharing your thoughts with the group, head on over to the Facebook group and then write podcast and request an ad. This is where we'll be discussing these and other topics. If you'd rather message me directly, feel free to email me at andthenwrite@gmail.com. Thank you for listening today. I hope you'll join me again in a few weeks for episode 4.